Work study meeting of the Carrollton-Farmers Ranch ISD Board of Trustees to order at 5:32 p.m. Moved it up 30 minutes. On January 15th, 2026, for the record, board members present are Tim Brady, Eliana Garza Rojas, Martha Barnes, Paul Gilmore, Randy Sackman, and myself, Connor Hatfield. We constitute a quorum and make business on behalf of the church. The next agenda item is audience for guests. Anyone who wishes to speak during audience or guests needs to complete a form by 1 o'clock p.m. today, based on board policy BED local. As of 1 o'clock p.m. today, there were no requests submitted to address the board, so we'll move on to item number 3, which is our work study discussion items. And our first item is for training conducted by Housing Policy Service. We have work here today, but Dr. Eldridge, will you introduce that?
I just finished swallowing my chip, so sorry. So Brooke has been a part of TASB for 8 years. And so I've been so fortunate to work with her and for the 8 years that she's been with TASB. And today she's going to provide an education of legal versus local, probably throw in some regulation understanding in there. And so we are just very fortunate to have her. She's very busy, but she explains it so clean and clear, and that's what I wanted you all to hear. Just an understanding of what we should do, could do, or maybe some things we should avoid. So, Brooke, I give it to you, and thank you so much for traveling to see us. I also want to point out that we have our leadership group, and it's always a good teaching time. So those aren't just audience for guests. They're very important leaders in our district that now we all can understand from the same lens. So thank you so much for being here. It's so good to see you.
Yes, thanks so much for the invite and for you, Tammy, and for Brian. So everyone's here has been so welcoming. So really positive things to say about CFB. That's just my little acronym. That actually is board policy. We don't need to. And I do know what it stands for and what it is. But yeah, so we'll go through a little bit of policy 101, then I'll dive into your actual policy manual, show you kind of those resources, and then we'll actually dive a little bit deeper into update 126, what that means, and all of these fun things. So first, a little bit about myself. I grew up in Amarillo, Texas. I went to school at UC Dallas. I was a student government president, and so I got connected with the legislators, and I worked at the state a couple sessions, and then I worked in Congress. I like state politics better than federal, and so I needed a way to meet. I met my husband on a political campaign, so I was in Austin, and I needed to find a job, and I found one with TASB, and I've been there ever since. So that's a little bit about me. We don't have too much time to go into who you are, but I first want to say thank you so much for serving on your board. You guys make the biggest bucks by being a board member, and that's a joke because we're all volunteers. So thank you so much for all of what you do for this district and for the board. So, like I said, the objectives for this little policy 101 is to dive into making sure we're all on the same page when we talk about what does policy mean. What is the legal framework? What are these A's and B's and X's and all of those things? Then we'll dive further into governance and management, obviously the governance section, and then the management, Dr. Eldridge, and then as designees, Tammy, and then the admin team as well. And then, of course, resources to help you do your job because you have full-time jobs. I asked Randy, I said, what's your professional job? And he said, oh, I'm a retiree. And I said, that's awesome. So, yeah, it's fun times doing all kinds of jobs. So we'll dive right in. So how does policy service help support you? So you have me. I am your policy consultant. There are around 10 of us. I manage over 100 school districts across the state of Texas. I ran, my largest district has over 100,000 students. I have a small district that serves about 40 students. So a range is the gamut. And as you probably know, out of the 1,000+ school districts in Texas, the majority are less than 1,000 ADA. Now, y'all are what I would consider a large district. So yay for y'all. But in that, we also have some great data. I think you need to make data-driven decisions and kind of be in lockstep. Also, you want to know what's really going on in your region. I know you will talk to one another. So what are we doing? Are we going to be out of lockstep with one another, or what what's unique to Carrollton-Farmers branch. And at the end of the day, we want to make sure what's reflective of your community is right for you. Because I can guarantee you, what's right for a CFB is not what's best for Amarillo, or Austin, or any of that. So we want to know what's right for you all. And as such, is there has been calls. So entertaining is usually my phone contact. Dr. Elders can always give me a call. You can always give me a call. I guarantee you, just probably most of your calls. I'm going to park those to a private legal service. And let me just say this: I am not an attorney. So with that, I can say, oh, I probably know the answer, but I'm going to deflect and give deference to our legal team as well as your local counsel as well. Always give deference to them. And then, yeah, so we support you with board policy, recommended considerations for y'all to consider. And then, of course, admin regs, which is a huge critical component to help support the board policy that y'all adopt. Now, when we dive in, what's in a policy manual? Y'all probably seen all of this 7 sections of your manual listed by an alphabetical grouping structure. As such, I mentioned CFB. Does that stand for anything, or does DEA stand for anything? What do y'all think? You can talk.
Well, the first letter is a section.
Awesome. Yes, great. So the point of that is no, CFB does not stand for Carrollton-Farmers branch. It's actually your capitalization threshold policy. DEA does not stand for Drug Enforcement Agency. Well, yes, it does. But for your purpose, it's about your compensation plan. So all of these things, you don't need to know these letter combinations, but it is helpful whenever you see update 126 on your agenda. If I look and I see something in section B, hey, I know it's about the board. So quickly go through, I can read this to you as well. A, basic district foundation. Y'all, I see on your agenda AE. That's usually about mission vision, so vision focused. At section B, local governance. A lot of what's in board policy for boards, like directives, your elections, your authority and powers, also district and campus site-based decision-making committees. That's in section B. Section C, instead of C-section, is all about your finance. So anything, well, also technology. So technology, finance, business practices, you name it, is in there. D, everything about personnel. So how you hire, if you terminate, your local leaves and absences, all of that's in section D. E's instruction, academic achievement, graduation, class rank, special ed, all of that's in section E. F is the largest section in your manual, rightfully so, because it's about students. So how you admit students, your transfer students, medical treatment of students, discipline, extracurricular activities, all of those things in section F. And then, of course, another small section is about community and governmental relations, visitors to campus, your facility operations, all of that's in section G. PIA requests, section G. So that's a little bit about what's actually in your policy manual. Then we go even a step further. Now, this is insanely small, I like to say, but we have it based off of like the BBB. You see board elections. I don't know, who's the newest board member on the team? Yay!
Yeah, FNC is actually fun new guys.
Oh, fun new guys. See, it means something, but yes. Anyways, so last elected, then you go to BBBA, how you conduct elections, and when you have them, post-election procedures. And so you see, it's just a coding structure. Doesn't mean anything, but it's how we've organized it to make some kind of semblance for y'all to, find some context. Does that make sense? Cool. All right, now we dive into the 2 kinds of policy that you have. The first are legal framework, and then the second is local policy. So the first, your legal framework documents, part of your policy manual, are from all sources of law. We're talking federal law, state law, attorney general opinions, court commission, cases, anything from the tax code, the ed code, the gov code, obviously anything. We're trying anybody that can create rules that affect school districts. We compile that for you, and typically issues those through TASB numbered updates. This last post-legislative update, update 126, around 40% of your legal framework documents changed. It was our largest update to date, and that's probably why you have a lot of questions, because it was huge, the biggest we've ever seen. And I don't know if that's going to change or what's going to happen, but it was just the biggest one. Now, I think I know the answer to this because y'all can read the screen. Does the board adopt legal framework documents or those policies? No, thank you. No. It's the law. Unfortunately, you don't get a choice on whether or not you follow the law. You took your oath of office, you gotta follow the law. Now, local policy, out of your entire policy manual, when I say big blue book, does that mean anything to y'all? We used to call it the big blue book. That's like if you printed it out, and I think, what is it now, like 3,000 pages, 2,600 pages. About 3/4 of your manual are legal framework documents. That 1/4 is highly contested. Why? Because you guys are voting on those local policy decisions to help the foundation and set the foundation for your community. As you can tell, there's not going to be a local policy for every legal framework doc. Okay? And sometimes there's not a legal framework doc for every local policy. We'll dive a little bit further into that. But the main thing to say is I can't stress enough. Read legal, read the local if there's one, then you'll have your supplemental admin regs, and I'll get to the regs in a moment. But the point being, your legal framework is there to help you. It's not an interpretation, it's like a resuscitation, a compilation, if you will, of the reference laws, codes, whatever. And then your local policy, this is what you guys are deciding on. Of course, based off of recommendations from the admin team to help support your goals that you want to accomplish here at the district. So local policy set by y'all from recommendations from us, from whatever the law says, and those are the two kinds of documents in your manual. Does that make sense? So let me talk a little bit about some identifiers. This is super. I keep saying inside baseball. I'm a huge Texas Rangers fan, so I'm really excited about that. And with this, okay, date issued. Have y'all ever thought, oh, is that the adoption date? Because no, it's not. That just simply means when we posted it online. In 2022, with our huge Paul online migration, we've now added the ability to add an adoption date. If you ever go online and peruse your policy online, because I know all of you have your free time to do that, if you ever see, hey, I don't see an adoption date, well, that's because it was probably pre-2022, and you have that in your agendas, I'm sure, in your record retention. Part of your process is there. But I just wanted to show like that's a good identifier. Update 115. So that tells you where was this change coming from? What happened? So this was from a TASB number update that we pushed out. And yeah, that's all you really need to know. A, DED local A. A, this is the key part. If it has an A, a B, a C1, a D1, anything not an X, that means it is TASB standard version. It's gone through our legal muster. It meets the minimum requirements according to law and the reasons why you have a local policy in general. And those are our standard policies. So one thing I've shared with Tammy before, we want to make sure your policy manual is customized and reflected to meet your needs. Remember, you're very different from an Amarillo or an Austin, so we've got to do what's right for CFB. And as such, sometimes I get policies, usually from like anybody in-house counsel, you name it, and they say, hey, can we change all of these little words to say like wills instead of shalls, because shall seems a little archaic, but that's just a policy style, you know what I mean? And my conversation would go like this: sure, you can absolutely change that, but that's not a substantive change. So why? Why do you want to change the will instead of a shall? And if there's not a real good reason that's, customized to reflect the needs of your district, I might say save your money, because you're charged every single time you readjust any of those words. And if you need to further customize, we can add it, or you might want an administrative regulation to help support the document that you have in your local policy. So that's a little bit, like I said, inside baseball. A's standard version, X means it's been customized to meet the needs of your district. Now there are just so many potential, I think this is the next one. This is just another identifier, if you will. X is, there's many local policies that you have too many options for, so it's gonna be unique to projects. A good example of this is class rank. I mean, or EIE, which is your retention and promotion policy, your EIF, graduation policy. All of those are going to be totally unique. DEC, that's a huge one. Every single district, or most districts, I said I don't want to use absolutisms, so we'll say nearly all, have differences in DEC, your leaves and absences. So think about that as you're going. But X means it's been further customized. And whenever I do this policy review with the admin team, and you all get to see it as well, we definitely hone in on those unique policies because we looked at the historical record. When was this added? Is it still relevant? Those kinds of discussions need to be done in that comprehensive review.
Brooke, can we take just a 1 minute timeout so we can plug in a cord so we can project it on that screen so they can see it as well?
Oh, totally. AI, you have that, CQD. The board shall adopt a policy about your cybersecurity plan, CQB. You shall adopt a policy about, SPED, that's EHBAF. So it just keeps going on and on and on. That's a pretty easy check mark of compliance there. The second one is to reduce potential legal risk. So there are some policies out there to help mitigate any risk because you're a business and we want to make sure that y'all are protected. And so a good example here is DFE, that's your resignations and terminations and those kinds of things. Another is to declare the option. So if the law says may, what are you going to do? You got to decide, not in an arbitrary way, yes or no, shall not. So a great example here is, do you accept transfers or do you not accept transfers? You'd be surprised. If you accept transfers, great. Are there some exceptions? If you say no, are there some exceptions? And then you would dive further in from that. But you need to have a decision. For DEC, I keep bringing that up, and it's a little easy to prove. Do you have any of the donation programs? Those are optional. Do you have a sick leave bank, sick leave pool? Do you have a reimbursement for leave upon retirement, annual use of leave for like an incentive? Do you have bereavement leave? Those are the kinds of provisions that are optional. And then you would decide, yes, we want this, or no, we don't. And the last category is to declare your authority, or so a great example here is I put CI, when are things declared not necessary anymore, like your antiquated technology. I probably don't want, desktops from 1990s, just taking up space. Your CFO or whomever can say, oh yeah, these aren't declared as profitable or usable anymore, and then you can dispose of them. Another great example is hiring. So sometimes I've seen in policies where traditionally the board hires contract personnel, and then they delegate to the superintendent to hire non-contract personnel at will. So it's you're delegating that function, but that needs to be said in the policy. So those are the 4 reasons. So whenever you're thinking about, hey, we need to add this to policy, does it fit in the legal requirement? Does it fit in mitigating risk? What about, is it a legal option? Or is it to declare the board's authority? Most of the times, you could probably skip it to an admin reg. If you want to just further expound upon something that's in your board policy, then a great opportunity is to punt it to your district admin team and help them define or create regulations. I use this umbrella term, regulations. I think that's what y'all use too, but that term means multiple things. It's synonyms. So it means student handbook, student extracurricular handbook, your guidelines, your plans, your wellness plan, all of those guiding documents to help support the goals and the policy that you already have. So 9 times out of 10, you're going to have a reg for almost every policy. Like class rank, for example, you probably have, countless for determining class rank, your course catalog, all of those things to help support your class rank policy. Does that make sense? So those 4 categories are really key to see, do we need it? Do we not? A great example here is I get a call. Hey, Brooke, can we add a policy about clear backpacks on campus? And my response would be, that's not a policy. That's a campus guideline. You see the difference there? That's an administrative decision for your campus, from your superintendent, that no class or we want only clear backpacks on campus. But that's not a decision from the governance level. That's an administrative level. We'll dive in a little bit deeper on that. But when we're talking about considering revisions, what I want to point out is local policy is the what. What's supposed to happen? It sets the foundation, the parameters for how you operate as a district. And then how you implement policy is your regs. See, they work in tandem. And so when you're considering revisions, think about those 4 categories, how this relates to your goals. And my one recommendation is contact me before, because sometimes you call and you're like, hey, that clear backpack thing seems like a really great idea. and you did all this work, and then I come and I say, yeah, you didn't need to do any of that. And you're like, oh, well, crap, I just wasted a lot of time and energy on something that could just have been handled differently. You see what I mean? So it saves you time, money, it saves us time, whatever. And then, of course, any kind of details. Sometimes you might say, well, this is just so broad. It's probably written broadly on purpose to give your administrative team some discretion to help implement what it is that you set out to do. So, when we look at, and I think it's super critical as board members to see what it says in the ed code is your role. And I'm going to read this to you. The trustees, as a body corporate, have the exclusive power and duty to govern and oversee the management of the public schools of the district. Govern and oversee the management. That was from the rewrite of the 1995 ed code. Notice it doesn't say manage every single step that happens in the district. So that micro level of management, that was pre-95, but then they took a step back and said, no, the board needs to govern and oversee. So when we think about, and y'all know this, what are some roles and responsibilities for board members? You adopt the policy, you make the policy, you establish your goals. I know we're not talking about that today. You establish superintendent goals, you evaluate the superintendent, you evaluate outcomes, you delegate authority, and of course you adopt policy. So that's your role. Notice it didn't say do all the ins and outs. Do you want to go and fix the plumbing issue? Probably not, but you know, you could. And then the next thing is, what is the superintendent? So the superintendent is the chief educational leader for the school district. There's got to be a level of trust there from the board and the superintendent. I think y'all have that. Y'all have been great thus far. And without that trust, it's going to be real difficult to have a thriving, successful district. And some of the roles for the superintendent is, of course, look, manage the day-to-day operations, prepare policy regs, oversee the policy implementation, and develop regs. Now, Dr. Eldridge is Superwoman and Wonder Woman, but she can't do it all by herself. That's why she has a great admin team with Brian and Tammy and everyone here. I don't know your names, but great job. And as such, she is able to delegate a lot of her responsibilities through policy BJA, and that's why sometimes you might see me are deleting or designate, because you can already delegate per that provision. So trying to simplify your manual as well sometimes. But as such, at the end of the day, she's ultimately responsible. Ultimately responsible, and then y'all are responsible to your constituents, people that voted you in. So, how does it work together? Admin team recommends policy, board adopts policy. Are we all clear on what the term policy means? Because that's step one, right? Because I can't tell you, my dad's a teacher and he misuses the term all the time, policy, and I say, no sir, that's not what you mean, but it's a new frame of thinking, a new paradigm shift, if you will. So policy is a governance statement. If you say the word policy, okay, where's the adoption date? When did the board adopt this? If there's no governance action, then it's not policy. It's probably a reg.
We confuse policy and practice.
I think that's
yes. And so I think that is something our leadership team deals with is we find out practices are policy, but they can. I think that's a good what you just said. Like, could you show me when that was adopted? Yeah. That would be a good leadership lesson for our administrators.
Well, and
not
not
the
the
procedures.
Yes.
The regulations.
Procedures, regulations, practices, but that's not
Plans,
policy.
correct. But let me just say, sometimes people think policy and procedures are synonyms. They are not. They are not. You see them go hand in hand and everything else, but school district policy. It's different. So policy and procedures are not synonyms. And not to pick on admin teams, but sometimes they misuse the term policy all the time. I mean, it's just what happens. Me, I'm going to say, oh, you don't mean policy though. You mean your procedure. You mean your reg. Because if you're not in that mindset all the time, you're kind of like, oh, the policy says X, Y, Z. No, it doesn't. This is your policy. Does that make sense? Okay. Going into a little bit of depth here about BP for regulations. So we already said that the superintendent's the chief educational leader, and then this is what they do: manage day-to-day operations, prepare recommendations, and develop the admin regs, and that's in the ed code. So that's the legal document right there. Very supposed to do. And then look, here's your local policy. That key thing right there with the circle, right? No board action. Admin regs are subject to board review, but not adopted by the board. That's huge. So y'all need to review what's going on, but there's no rubber stamp approval process. Does that make sense? So you need to know about the procedures for class rank, but any kind of like dipping your toe and trying to cultivate that yourself, I'd say leave that to the admin team. Remember, going back to govern and oversee management. Cool? All right. The process, this is pretty simple: development, rec, adoption, implementation, monitor, and evaluation. Tammy gives me a call based on a conversation y'all had. Hey, we want to increase our capitalization threshold to $100,000 because now we're able to do that. Okay, cool. I'll send you that recommendation. CV is N126, so I would give you an adjustment to CH. And because you might not know that, there are policies and groups that go together. If you change one, did you know you might have to change another? If y'all are on a 6-week schedule or a 9-week schedule. 9. So if y'all ever went back to a 6, there are multiple policies you would need to change. So there are some things that you're like, okay, I think I got it. But there's breadcrumbs throughout that we need to make sure are all in alignment. I recommend it to y'all, and then the superintendent recommends it to the board's adopted. Okay, great. Now it's inactive, it's effective. So what happens? Well, we need to have some business procedures written out now. We need to adjust those business protocols for this new capitalization threshold. And then you monitor and evaluate. Did this work? Did this help simplify the process to be a little bit more efficient? Or do we need to tweak something else in our procedures? Then you need to go from there. You see, it's the cyclical nature. All right, resources we got. Me, your TASB number updates. I can't emphasize this enough. If you see a U and a number sequence, that means it's initiated by TASB. And LDU, now that does stand for something. Local District Update, initiated by the district. So when we do our policy review session, that is an acronym, PRS, we will get a large local district update. Your update 126, and your board members guide to policy. Have any of y'all ever logged in and looked at that? Oh, great. Usually I'm like, I hear responses. Do you have that? So yay, 5 gold stars for y'all. And then of course, policy online. I hope y'all have logged in to policy online. Usually the first thing is, oh crap, I forgot the password. So I'm sure Ken can help you as well. But policy online is your friend, and it will default to your legal method and go from there. Of course, I'm going to show you this in an actual demonstration and other updates. These are the resources we have, and I'm going to go over quite a bit of them with you, so we can talk about some of those questions from 126. But yeah, what I think has been helpful, what we did this time around is we did a webinar, an hour-long webinar. Usually we've never done this before, but because this was huge in scope, we wanted to give board members and admin team enough resources to be able to bring the information to y'all in a succinct way, present it to you quickly. And I would say go check it out. If you still have further questions, it's a good overview, if you will. Now, the annotated legal framework, you're like, well, why do we even have this if it's the law and we don't get a say-so? Well, it's probably helpful for y'all to know where this simulated from. HB2, and so it's good for y'all to just, I think it's the best way to arm yourself with information and be informed. I mean, there's lots of information out there, but being informed is very different. And making those informed decisions, I think, is the best ways. You have the resources right here. All right, PRS, don't need to dive fully into this, but that's what we're going to do. I'm doing a comprehensive review where I go from A to G, go through all of your local policies, over 190 local policies, And based on a questionnaire from your admin team, I sift through all of that and figure out, okay, where is there maybe potential misalignment? And where can we maybe tighten things up? And it'll be a great training mechanism, I think, for your team. Brian's been through one. Did you think it was great? Please say yes.
Fantastic.
Okay. So, and Tammy's been through several things, so I think it'll be really worthwhile. Obviously, Dr. Rowley, yes, that's fun. All right.
When you say it's worthwhile, are we about to do that?
In February.
February 11th and 12th, we are doing our entire administrative support.
Okay. So we're going through the whole thing, A through G.
Yes, I am. I am, and then they will present to y'all all of the recommendations based on that, where maybe there was some misalignment, or we need to remove this practice. This is not what we were doing. We thought this was the practice. It wasn't. Maybe we like what's in policy and we need to adjust regulations. So those are the conversations we'll have.
So we're doing 126, and then we're doing a full policy review.
Yes.
Board members, any questions about that? And then I think on our end, that's where our subcommittee comes in, because we have a subcommittee that looks at the recommendations before it goes before the full board. So we have kind of some board members that take a deeper dive.
Yes, and that's what I'm going to go through in 126.
Okay.
But pretty much what I sent to Tammy, I have assumed that'll go to your subcommittee. And then that way you come back to me and I can help fix things because I am human and I do make mistakes. So if you're like, that's not what we discussed, Brooke, I can adjust before you bring it to the board. Because obviously you want this to be clean and ready to go for approval when you have your meeting.
So, Brooke, I have a question, and this came up as one. Oh, good, perfect timing. Just talking to other superintendents and how you all have changed your philosophy on regulations. We were talking as a leadership team, like, do we need to put those on an intranet? Do they need to be public? Obviously, we don't have regulations. This is 3 years for me, so there's a lot of regulations that are missing, and that's what's created practices. And so what is the best way to attack that? One, how to get them all finished, because now we're adopting a whole other set of policies that we need regulations for. And where's the best place to house them? Because I know you all used to do that, and it was like $1 a page, and I don't think you guys don't do that anymore. And so we don't know. We had a debate of where to put them, and how public some of them need to be. And also for our administration, if you got a parent that has a problem, you can say, well, here's our regulations. And we started really we've written our grievance procedures and regulations, but we want to make sure that we have those where everybody can, especially on leadership, can access them.
Absolutely. So we're not going to solve that question today.
Okay.
But I will say you get full authority to do whatever you want. So some districts, they have them all on their website, public facing. The problem there is whenever I go to them, it's like from 2012, from 2020. And so the maintenance has been very difficult to, upkeep, especially when we change policy almost every 2 years, right? Mm-hmm. Or and then every year based on decision, rulemaking authority changes. So we try to create some sample regs. And this is brand new knowledge. I don't know if I do. There will be a change coming at the RRM coming shortly, which just stands for Regulations Resource Manual. And so be on the lookout, Tammy, for that. And it'll be user friendly. We can adjust regulations at any time rather than with numbered updates. So that's going to be really helpful.
Great. Okay.
Rather than, oh gosh, we have to wait for like 3 months, 4 months to get this regulation sample from TASB, we will be able to quickly get those out there. Yes, but you won't get like update 72. Will be no more. You'll just get them as frequently as they come in. I think that's a better system.
I think that's great.
So that'll be that's coming. You're the first to know. Yay! Okay, but another opportunity, and y'all are now required to post all of your resolutions on your website. That happened in the legislative session. So there is a tool that I can show you. I have other access. Actually, I think it's in the policy online users guide. Sometimes this stuff, oh look, I have to log in. Yay! You'll have to log in all the time, right? Okay. With this, there's this thing called a resource link, which you technically can add to your policy manual online. Yes. So what I was going to get to is there's this thing of like add a resource link. So if you see policy, I'm just keep on DEC, you see policy DEC, you could have a resource link and you could have several different links to click on. One would be maybe a discretionary form. One might be your employee handbook. That might be helpful. Other different docs, then you can link to that particular code. So that, I think that's super helpful. This is free. But the problem is it has to be somewhere public or somewhere on your intranet or something like that to be posted behind the scenes. Does that make sense? A lot of districts do have an intranet where you log in and then that's how you find all of your procedures, etc. But yeah, I mean, obviously you have to post your code of conduct, which is board approved, but your handbook is board reviewed. That's technically an admin reg. You could link it to any of the policies online if you wanted to, in a resource link, some of like your subsections, if you will. So that's a potential, but there's no right way to do it, but the work needs to be done.
Right.
And it's a tough project. I think you could spend a full year without doing just policy. Tammy could spend a full year with a whole team to develop regs for maybe just A to D. Like, it's going to be a ton. CQ, policy, who's ever tech, is the number one place in policy where it says superintendent shall develop regulations, because there's so much about technology, your acceptable use, your internet safety program, a plan rather. There's a lot into that, and where is that housed? So anytime it says the superintendent shall develop the reg, I think that's what Tammy's going through right now. We have some samples, but they're just samples. And they might not be what you need, because remember, it's a starting point, and we represent all districts. So it might not be an issue for y'all, but it's just a great place of, hey, I didn't think about that. And maybe you develop a procedure about that. So resource link is an option. It's free and you can tag it to a policy code.
It could be a project for some doctoral students, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, that's a great idea.
You know, they could get some research hours. We might have a few, you know.
That's a great idea. But it's a huge project because
She's not looking at it.
There's multiple in the room, not no eye contact.
I mean, I think they have to get so many hours. They have to get so many hours for their superintendent certification as well. So that's part of it.
But I think it'll be a good starting point with this PRS. I'll be able to dive in and say, hey, look, did you know do you have a see, look, even I just did it. Do you have a procedure about donor choose? I'm sure you do. But, you know, those kinds of things. Do you have procedures? Exactly. Who has ownership of that? Where does it go? Where does it belong? And then, is this even relevant? You got to think about the timestamp.
That's the other thing. Is it relevant? Like, that's the other review. Do we really actually need it?
Yeah.
Oh, and the beautiful thing about your regs is that they can be changed at any point in time. That's the beautiful thing. If something's not working, you can adjust. So great example here, and I don't know if anybody's on Shack, but yay. On your wellness plan, that's not board approved, but definitely presented to the board for that annual requirement, you get to adjust what it is that you need to adhere to those goals. But in your wellness plan, you have action steps, strategies, your measurements, stakeholders, all of these things. Well, if you get halfway through the year, you're like, there's no way we're going to make this goal if we keep these action steps in place. We need to adjust. So your admin team needs that flexibility to make those changes to meet the goals that you adopted at Policy FFA. that make sense? So that's what's critical about your regs is remember what happens is policy, how you implement policy is through your regulations, procedures, practices, plans, guidelines, handbooks, synonyms.
So that's what I was gonna ask. So for the handbook, the superintendent also has authority to change that as well, right?
Yes.
Even.
It's just that notification because since it's a big document and there's requirements to send it out to your entire community, if you make changes, then that just has to be a notification tool to your entire district.
Okay.
Yeah, or go and train.
Okay.
Yeah, same thing for your employee handbook. If you change practices about, hey, this is what we want to change going forward, maybe with comp time or overtime or whatever it is, and you want to do this with a new fiscal year or whatever that might look like, you can adjust. But those are procedures, not board review. Cool? So that's my super basic policy 101, and I wanted to dive into your actual policies that you had some questions about from update 126. Before I go there, I know I threw a lot at you, but does that make sense? Read legal, local together to get that complete picture. You have, maybe it's not meeting one of those 4 categories of policy, so you punt it to a regulation. You're supposed to govern and oversee the management, even in your policy subcommittee. Do we need to change every shall to will? Why? Is that a substantive change? Those kinds of things.
For the record, I do not recommend changing your shall.
No, that's just
That's just an example.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah, just want to make sure everybody knows that was not what.
That's a great clarifying.
We did spend 6 hours, but we did not change shells to will.
Okay, so I'm just gonna go in for a couple, or is there any that y'all had before I kind of dive in? Okay, these are some of the examples that from your work that you've done in the government. So I shared the spreadsheet and some of your feedback, so that's why we selected.
Okay.
So for BE, remember we added this: board meetings shall be held during a time that is outside of typical work hours. That is a requirement. So any of those lunchtime meetings, any 8 meetings at 8 a.m., those are the kind of things that are no longer. So, as such, typical work hours, probably 5, whatever y'all decide. Obviously, you'll meet at 7. Now, you might have a question, say, Brooke, it deleted 7 p.m. and then it just added 7 p.m. What is going on? Well, there's this thing in the back for accessibility, because you need to meet those accessibility standards. And our converter from Word to Dolby sometimes gets funky behind the scenes for that accessibility. So that's why you see the duplicate. Does that make sense? It's funky. But guess what you can always do? Guess what you can also do though? You can also look at the clean copy. You can go to the clean copy. You're like, okay, I don't even see what's going on because every other word is red and blue. Then just go to the clean, and that'll give you the better. Okay, this is why. But sometimes the converter, if you will, is finicky. So no, your meeting is still at 7, and it is the first Thursday. Okay, but the agenda, because y'all of the posting and the requirements for that, a consideration that we had was the 10th calendar day. Whatever you think is feasible to meet the posting requirements, because remember, it's not 72 hours, it is 3 business days, enough time for your admin team to prepare, enough time for you to review. You get to decide what that looks like. We put in 10 calendar, you can put in 7 calendar, you can put in 10 business, you get to decide. We are not telling you what to do. Does that make sense? So you can have some further discussion on that.
You guys are proposing 7.
I think that we put 7 calendar days, and we've already had this. Okay.
I will,
One edit comment on
Anyway, yeah, we don't need to go into that, but that, you can adjust it. But remember the posting requirements. And do you have enough time to create a report, to do some further investigation, some more discovery? That's what you've got to consider.
So the law is that, but it's flexible?
No. This is the agenda deadline.
Okay.
So you obviously need some procedures, your board operating procedures, to make sure you're following the law. So agenda deadline, we're putting in the policy what it is to be in compliance with the OMA. What is your deadline? So if you get a level 3 grievance appeal, that's what's they adhere to and what you all adhere to. So this is also something, Dr. Eldridge, that you want to make sure matches your board operating procedure for how you conduct your board meetings. If you change that, we need to change the fee.
Yeah, and I think we're reviewing those in April, May, board operating.
Yes, we're bringing that after 126 gets adopted, then the subcommittee will go to the box so we can make sure everything aligns with the goal of hiring.
Okay, but do you see that? So the law says something, posting requirement, but you need some kind of deadline because you don't want it the same day. Because how is somebody going to be prepared to make sure what it is that you want to bring to the board? Does that make sense? Especially a level 3 bill.
So didn't TASB come out with a framework for board operating?
Oh yeah.
So, I mean, I think y'all really
That's not
streamlined it.
me. That's a
Yeah,
board
I know.
consultant.
Yeah.
But yes, we have those resources for y'all. So you're not starting from square one.
Yes.
Okay.
Is it aligned to the policy? Like, would it, okay. I just
But
need to
remember,
go
y'all will
and
have to do your investigation.
Okay.
Some of those data points are
read. Change.
unique.
I think ours is a little
Correct.
We'll get that streamlined.
Okay, so a comment here I saw about BED, which is your policy about public comment, but you also have public comment procedures that you definitely have to adopt.
So on the one you just showed, that was not what we requested. It was specific to special meetings. It was not for regular board meetings.
It's the same, 10 and 10. I just highlighted it.
So our comment, we don't care about the regular board meetings. We're concerned about special meetings because special meetings aren't always called that fast. So that was our concern, that it's the regular board meetings, 10 calendar days makes sense. But for a special meeting, sometimes those happen quickly. And so if somebody wants to add something, that window, we felt like that window should be smaller because it's a special meeting and the board may just have gotten notified. And sometimes they have gotten notified that we're going to have a special meeting and it's within 10 calendar days, which is why we wanted to shrink it just on special, not on regular.
That's a local decision.
So I think that would be a discussion for the board. That was the subcommittee's recommendation, was knowing that special meetings, typically they're not, if we're going to call a special meeting because we need to, let's say there's been an example where we had a board meeting, we didn't make a decision. So then we're going to put a special meeting on to go ahead and make that decision before the next board meeting. If in that agenda development, we wanted to add something, we felt like 10 calendar days wasn't reasonable because the timeline may be so short anyways before the special meeting.
So what you're saying is, it says the deadline, something. So maybe items for inclusion on the agenda is
The 10th
the
calendar
10th calendar day before regular meeting and the
7th calendar day before special meetings.
oh,
Yeah.
just the number.
You can change that. I think most districts have it the same for consistency. Because you've got a lot to remember. And if you would just remember 10, 7, whatever. You can obviously make them different. But I think it was the consistency and the ease of, well, we have to remember all these numbers. What does that look like? So that's just your call. You get to decide that. That varies for district. Okay. BED. The comment was here about, well, why do we have this thing that says CFA? This is a great example where there's breadcrumbs throughout your entire policy manual that affect other sections in the manual. Okay, so policy FA, hopefully what y'all would do is, all right, let's go and look at FA. What is FA all about? Let me just go here, sorry. Okay, so this is about the parent portal. This is a brand new policy from the legislative session from SB 12 that requires you to have parent portal. And also, if you look at here, handbook, Dr. Edwards shall develop admin regs related to the portal, including placement on the district or campus website and how campus or district administrators are to address comments received from the parents through the portal. And the reason why it's at BED is because that's your public comment. Will you, won't you add these to your public comment? That's an administrative decision based on probably what feedback y'all will have. But you see how there's that breadcrumb there to go, oh, let me go back to see what is FA about, even though it's at BED. Does that make sense? And the other thing to look at is, of course, and your legal action. I have this for y'all. I'm just going to scroll. And I told you this is your manual and a PDF. It's huge. Yeah. Look. Oh, wow. Let me go here. All the way to the bottom. Leave. And you don't need to see me going all the way, but it's about the parent portal. Okay. Another question at CV was why did we remove the dollar amount? And of course I could have misinterpreted the comment, but why we removed it is because the threshold changed in law, and who knows when they're going to change it again. So why not, for your sake, to save you money and our sake to go back and change it every 2 years, why don't we just say delete that and put threshold established in law? Doesn't that seem simpler and cleaner? Rather than adding whatever that threshold might be. Ease, efficiency. Does that make sense? And then another question here was, maybe we adjust this.
Is our purpose to discuss these right now, or are you just telling us information?
This is just an yeah.
Okay. I just want to make sure, because like, if we're having a conversation and like we're trying to talk about it, or if the subcommittee's going to go back based on your feedback and then look at it. I just want to clarify.
I think you should ask me questions because I'm here to help.
Okay. Okay.
I will not be at your subcommittee. So, yeah, if you have questions, now's the time to ask. So if something's not quite clear, how can I help you, find that clarity?
I think the clarity in value in policy, sometimes we want to make sure we're following policy, and I think for our board, the more details, and I think it is a discussion, but I also think it's like what is feasible to do, because as you're new to policy, is it better to have a concrete amount to protect you, or or do you just, especially maybe you don't have the regulation developed. So I think it's just making it clear, how do we follow the rules, and making sure that as a board they're following the policies, and we're also not creating extra work or extra wording. And I think that's where I'm not trying to do 6-7. But I'm just saying that in my historical understanding of policies, which this is the kind of stuff I really like, which is, that in order to protect your board and for them to understand what is the best way. And I think that's what she's saying. What Brooke is saying is, okay, you can put this in here, or we can do it this way. And I think you guys, whether you want to talk to her about it or digest it, and then talk amongst yourself, because I think sometimes we have a habit of editing, and not thinking about the whole picture and what it affects. And so we just want to do what's right as superintendent of board. We want to follow the process. Yeah.
Our attorneys can countless hours.
And I understand that, but I think one thing, like, when you look at this, a competitive threshold established by law, when we talked as a subcommittee, what came up multiple times is, what is established by law?
Did you go to
Now the
legal
policy
framework?
does not tell me which law that I'm supposed to look at. So we're like, so am I supposed to go Google a law and find out what the established policy was by law?
Yeah, that's a great example. I saw that for DDD. So-
Because like, as defined by what law? So how would I, as a community member, or a board member, or administrative staff, know what law I'm supposed to look at?
And you can literally go down a rabbit hole very quickly. I mean, I can't tell you how many times as we were going through this and trying to understand what was being suggested. You know, you go to the legal policy, but then you have to go to the ed law. You know, it continues. Well, in order to try to understand too, it was, there are countless times where it kind of led us down a rabbit hole to try to, just to see what the purpose was for those changes.
I can understand that. Like I said, sometimes it is a little overwhelming with all of our several breadcrumbs. The example here for DVD, I think you said, what's an administrator? Well, how are we supposed to know that? Well, read legal and local together. So right here it says, administrator means a person, and blah, I don't need to read the definition to you. But that's what we're talking about. So, there's the legal. Now you know why we said as defined by law, because there's no need to resuscitate, right? The legal. Because the law changes, that doesn't always mean you need to resuscitate another change in your local policy. We never recommend you duplicate what's in your legal in your local. Why? Because the moment the law changes, usually September 1, you're effective to adhere to those laws and rules. So your policy might not be applicable, and it might be out of compliance, but we have a catch-all phrase for law at policy BF, which is harmony with law, that says anytime the law is applicable when effective, then that's the thing that you're following. So with update 126, obviously you did not get your update till November. October, it's because we prioritize your handbook and your code. You need those for school to start. You absolutely need your handbook and code for the school to start. So we prioritize that, and then your update comes. There was some things that, were before school started, like your homeschool, FD, FM, your library policy, your cell phone. We got loads of calls about that. And that was actually an effective date before September 1. So that's why we had to do some extra due diligence and reach out to districts and say, what do you want to do? Because we don't decide the policy, you do, but we want to give you the tools to make effective decisions.
So one thing we noticed is that what you're saying right now is if it says as defined by law, we should reference legal.
Absolutely.
So there are some times when it says as defined by law, parentheses, CX, and it tells you see that. And then there are sometimes it says as defined by law, and it doesn't say see that.
And that's
the clarity that we were trying to gain, is that it wasn't consistent. And so if I'm a community member and I'm like, as defined by law, I don't know, go see the legal policy. We need to go see the legal policy. And so we were trying to find that balance between how do you know defined by law is go to legal or go down a rabbit hole.
Yeah. We have the legal, it's the very first thing on your local policy manual, or it's on your policy online, legal shows up first. We hope that people read that, even your community reads that, because that's the law, that's why you even have a local policy, to meet this local policy requirement. It's about moonlighting, and that was from, I think, HB2, something like that. So you have to have some kind of standard for why do we have a local policy. Usually the C, blah, 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 that reference there is for another code. And then a lot of that, you go to that code, hopefully you start with the legal, and then you go to the local. We don't really do training for the community, we just do it for board members and for administrators. But I can see your point there. The other point is you want your board manual to not be so huge. Every time it says as defined by law, we don't even put see the legal for this, or put these ed code document sites and those kinds of things. Because again, if it's in the law, we're not reciting what's in ed code 26.002 A, B, blah, blah, blah. Does that make sense? But I thought this was a great example because the comment was, well, what is an administrator? Here it is. And then, oh yeah, the formatting thing here. I think y'all said, oh, it looked like 6, 7, but it's 1, 2. And that's an easy fix.
You guys do all formatting at the end.
Yes.
Before it gets published on your portal.
Well, and hey, if at any point you're like, the board can't even, they don't even know what's actually being changed, can you send me a new draft? I will definitely be happy to do that for you. Do something that's readable. Or with the right, appropriate, 1, 2, any of that. Happy to do so. Okay. So that's essentially it. Have y'all ever looked at your explanatory notes? So we customize these for each district. These are the bane of my existence because I feel like they're not utilized. And we spend so much time, and it was so helpful. I know Tammy looks at them and then creates an even more description to help you guys figure out what decision you need to decide. And I can't emphasize these enough to review the legal and the local. This packet, I mean, yeah.
Right here.
Oh, perfect. Yes. Your casual reading, right?
Yes. I enjoyed it. That was great.
Oh, it's fun. Super fun. Yeah, it's light reading. But so those are tools that I highly recommend you look at. And those were just from some of the top ones of the ones that y'all consider. Do y'all have any other questions about the update? So that way, let me tell you this, there is no timeline to adopt any numbered updates, but I recommend you adopt them as soon as practicable, because guess what, 127 is coming out in May. And then it just keeps getting updated because people keep creating rules that affect school districts. It's just this cycle. And we want to make sure minimum y'all are in compliance. That's the goal here.
So as we look at our policies too, there's some that haven't been updated in many years.
Yes.
Is that part of the review that you're
Absolutely.
going to do?
Yeah, I will go through and say
Because that's going to keep
historically,
the policy
this is what we did in 2000. Is this still relevant? Is this still applicable? And yes, no. And we dive through that. And that's one of those discussions I say, hey, what is reflective of Carrollton-Farmers branch? Do we need to add something to this? Or do you think we could put all of these discussions and details in a procedure and be good to go? And just know that that's not just a punt off. We still have to do the work to create those procedures. But you first need the policy, and then you'll have the procedure in place.
Any additional questions?
Was this helpful?
Yes. Follow-up meeting on the questions that you guys have.
Thank you
Yes,
for being here. It was very helpful.
Okay, as long as y'all thought it was helpful, I just need y'all to know I am a resource for you. And
Great perspective on that, different reasons.
yeah, absolutely. Okay.
Okay, our next item is 3B, which is discussing Senate Bill 11 from the recent legislative session.
Well, so Senate Bill 11 has to do with the periods of prayer and religious text with public schools. I do want to just say this is a policy that we have to adopt. And we are already, is that right?
It's a resolution you have to consider.
Okay,
So
Consider not necessarily the
well, so I want to clarify that. So with our resolution, which also has to be put on public viewing,
yes. But if it's not adopted, then it's not on the public hearing.
the resolution, if it's voted yes,
Well,
it's
no, yeah,
okay.
you're right.
If we pass the resolution, we post it. right? So do we state what our stance is?
Yeah, I would say per your record vote, 6 ayes, 1 nay, or whatever that is. And you have to keep that per your retention schedule, but all resolutions adopted, one might argue, have to be on your website.
That's what I was asking. So it is a resolution and it's adopted whether it's yes or no, right?
Well,
Because it's a resolution that has, I mean, this is where I was getting
But
confused,
you only
so.
take one to the board, my understanding. You either take a yes or you either take the board, and that's what they.
But it's still a past resolution.
Correct.
That's what I was asking.
that's what y'all can do.
Okay. So there's really no.
No, I've had districts say, oh, well, we're gonna take it and we're not going to adopt the resolution. But if y'all have two versions, a yes and a no,
Okay, gotcha.
then that's easy.
I just wanted that clarification. Anyway, this has to do with our voluntary prayer, and this is something that we already allow in our school. I mean, we've allowed that because there's you know, when you talk about religious text or reading, you're not just talking about every religion may call it something different, and so this is one of the many that need to be addressed.
May I interject?
Yeah.
So 2 years ago, I don't know if y'all are familiar with what happened at the legislature with the chaplain bill.
Mhm.
And it's very similar to that. Do you want to hire employees as chaplains? Yes or no? Or just you do what you've been doing with you have volunteers.
Right.
And that was again another resolution. If you vote yes, then you have to have policy. If you vote no, then no policy. Same setup with SB 11 in terms of period of prayer. Yes, you have to have policy. No policy. But there has to be a record vote.
It's already true that the federal law already mandates individual prayer and church and religion in public schools as it stands.
Yes.
So this would actually be adopting something that would require us to either provide personnel to do,
Yes.
provide time during the school day, which is already jam-packed with things to do, and take away some instructional time in order to have this for all religions, not just Christian religion. I just make that really clear that the federal law already mandates that we have that, and we have policy to back that up, that we already have that in place.
And does the Ten Commandments issue fall into this, or is it a separate issue?
This has nothing to do with the Ten Commandments. This is allowing our students to, you know, use whatever religious text at any time. And, you know, if you think about a campus, which we already have, we allow already in our campuses, but if you adopt a policy, then it is now a different management issue. It is a issue that now I need to go, we may have a teacher teaching a lesson, but I need to go and follow SB 11. That is a classroom management, could be a potential classroom management issue or an administrative issue that I don't know where they're going to go. And so we see, you know, our kids reading religious texts, whether it's at lunch, in their car, or carrying it around already. Like we've already,
This has nothing.
we have
to
never
do
taken
with
that away.
FCA or Meet at the Pole or any of those student groups that already meet and are those religious student groups.
So,
And the Ten Commandments is a different bill too.
so I just wanted to introduce that as the fact that I don't know that, I mean, this isn't a resolution where we're taking something away. This would be adding another management layer in my mind. So I just wanted to preface it with that. And this will be on the agenda for the February board meeting, that this resolution will be yes or no. So we've got Tasby here if there's any questions regarding specifics. I didn't mean to just refer to Brooke as Tasby, but she does represent what, you know, what you can and can't do. So it's regarding grants. I mean,
The basic right and opportunity is already in place. We should literally just be adding to put it in the school day as student led with some kind of
Let me just jump in on this.
Like the issue is, we all have that right, that's fantastic, we'd love for everyone to have a designated time, but operationally, it cannot work, it will not work. Then you're going to have to say, okay, 10 a.m., everyone has that right, some do, some don't. Like Dr. Elder said, who's gonna be able to manage the students? Some are and some aren't. And now you're exactly in front of them. But everyone still has the right.
So just to make sure we're clear, so we have to have a record vote by March 1st. And so it's on the February agenda to vote to either adopt a policy that would require every campus to provide students and employees with an opportunity to have a period of prayer. And then, if we were to vote to offer the period of prayer policy, then administration would then need to go and create a regulation that would codify that in the day. That could be first thing in the morning, 10 o'clock, 2:30, but then they would be responsible for carrying that out in the schools. Or the other option is, of course, to make a record vote to not allow it. And I think what Ms. Brady is saying is let's just remember it's already in federal policy that people can pray. We just don't have a designated period of prayer at a specific time every day. But that's what Senate Bill 11 gives the opportunity to do, is to identify a time period every day for prayer that then would require administrative regulations to make that happen.
Gold star.
Yes.
That's why we brought her.
So, Christina, I have a question about Senate Bill 11. We wanted to make sure that as board members, we were fully aware going into the February meeting that we were required to take a regular vote, whether we want to or not. It's not that we're putting it on because we were like, let's get into this. It's required by law that we have a record vote. So if you need any additional information, I recommend that you go study. And you've heard administration's stance on that. Does anybody have any questions or comments, discussion about that? All right. Well, with that, we'll move to 3C, which is a discussion of board policy AE local. So our board operating procedures state that annually we will verify, re-adopt, confirm that our mission and vision and overall direction of the district is what we want it to be. And that can go into like, oh, well, actually, it's 2030, and maybe we need to revisit our mission and vision, or maybe something's not right here. And the board setting that overall direction. And so with the work that we have done with commit and really outlining our student goals and guardrails, remember that we set the goals and guardrails, Dr. Eldridge says the goal progress measures. And so one way to take the work that we've been doing and put that and codify it in policy is to say that based on these goals that we've set, the guardrails that we set, this is our expectation for the district, and that codifies it in policy. And so that has been an idea of how to move forward. Other school districts also do this, where they have their goals, lots of goals actually, in policy. It is not something we have done in the past, but it is in our board operating procedures that annually we're supposed to look at the mission, vision, and verify that's the continued trajectory. And so we brought this today for discussion of adding our student outcome goals and our guardrails to policy, to say, this is the pursuit that we are on. We are on these goals for 2030, and we have these guardrails. And then, following our board operating procedures, we would re-adopt this annually to confirm that we're still headed on this trajectory, or the board says, actually, we need to make an adjustment.
So I have an
So we're going to open it up for discussion and conversation around thoughts on adding on to our current AE local to codify the work that we've been doing.
Can I show my screen? So, I wanted to just give you some information to make some informed decisions. First, when we look at the legal, all it says is that a board shall adopt a vision statement and goals for the district and the superintendent. That's all it says. It doesn't say where it goes, doesn't say there's a policy requirement, nothing. Nothing. Minimum, you have to have a vision and goals. What I traditionally see are mission and visions at AD local, right? But remember, there's no mission requirement, but most districts have a mission. But where I see the goals are in your improvement plan. The reason I don't see it in AE local is because your goals change every year. So as such, then you would be changing local policy every year. You can do that. But what happens if you forget one year? And then what's effective? And then it just goes down the rabbit hole. So my thought is, if everyone truly knows that AE local is the place where we're supposed to go, what about are your goals duplicated elsewhere? Probably. So all of those other supplemental documents that you have that have your goals, do they match? And 9 times out of 10, yours is accurate. For your, we've double checked. I looked at the little thing. So some districts just have this, and that's their adopted vision statement. Some districts, they say their vision and mission every single board meeting. Obviously, that's a board decision, part of your board ops, you get to decide that. But it's so ingrained in their community that no, we don't need an AE local policy. We can just have a banner. We say it at the board meeting. All those things. But, and again, date not found. That's because this was pre-2022, right? So all that to say, you can absolutely add your goals. I'm not quite sure what guardrails there are. I think that's probably a local definition of what that is, and that's cool too. But that would be my one suggestion. You can do what you want.
So would we put these in board operating?
Well, those are adopted too. Your district improvement plan is reviewed on an annual basis.
I think, I've been asked to take a recess. We're going to take a recess, and at 6:57, we'll come back in 10 minutes. Okay?
All right, the time is 7:05 and we're back in session. We are going to continue on the discussion of item 3C, which was board policy 8 local. So before the break, we looked at definitions of why we put policy in place and how they can support us. And then we presented a policy based on the work that we've been doing as a board. And then there were some opinions about different things related to that. And so we're coming back now to have a discussion as a board about our stance on 8 local and what we think needs to be in it based on the fact that as it was presented from the legal option, that the board is to adopt a vision and goals. And so one way to do that is via policy. Other ways to do that are district improvement plans and various other things. So I thought I would open the floor for discussion about our preference related to codifying our student outcome goals and our goals in policy. Thoughts? Mr. Gilmore, you have an opinion.
I have an opinion. It may be wrong, but I have an opinion. And I know it's Amy local and all that, but I feel like we've done too much work as a board to point the train in the right direction. And knowing exactly where we're going and where the school district's going. And the superintendent's been on board with this and helping us. And I think she wants transparency and so I think that this needs to be out there because I may have a kid in 5th grade, but you can look at that and see, okay, this board knows what they're doing. They have a plan and it's all going in the right direction. And it just gives clarity to the community. Am I the only one in that group?
I just think that, I do think that when people see this, they will most likely see it on the website. They're not necessarily in a strict policy, but I do think it adds to the cohesiveness. And these aren't goals that we're adopting every year. These are goals that we are adopting for a larger time frame. And so, I think adopting into our local policies is that it gives it more. It's something that we're committed to. It gives it an.
Okay, well, my 2 cents is I really like having the student outcome goals on there. And because they're data driven, it's very clear what the expectation is. You can find where the percentages are, you can see how far we're coming. However, the guardrails are not quite as data driven specific. We're kind of like, we want you to do these things. So I would suggest that we do post or include the outcome goals, maybe not necessarily the guardrails at this time. I don't know policies are community members, they go to the policy, they don't understand it. I mean, that's a question for me, right? Thinking of my parents, and when they know, oh, yeah, the superintendent is going to be in the policy. I don't know if that would be the right thing, but also redirecting it to administrators on campus and the district improvement, the ISDs, I think is what you said, possibly. Because that does change every year. And so it could be a continued, let's say, we're still working on the school, we're still working on this. That's
So you're not sure if goals and like you think maybe it shouldn't be.
yeah, I don't think so, but I mean, I'm gonna go with the majority. I think this is great work, but I also am thinking of, like, what if 1 year things are crazy and our school board doesn't have time to update policy and this changes. And so I understand where it comes from, because this is a legal perspective too. And what if it changes? What if? But that's, again, I'm going to go with the majority of the board. Randy, you haven't said anything, so.
Well, no, I think you're barking up the right tree here from my perspective. one of the interesting things in the years that I've been on the board, had several occasions to refer stakeholders to policy. And almost 100% it's been what policy or where do you get that? While I want us to be transparent and I want us to have specifics that we can hang our hat on, I'm not sure that it's in our best interest if we get everything so minutely detailed. So there's times when we definitely want to, and I like your thought process of the goals as opposed to the actual guardrails.
So you wouldn't be opposed to the goals, but taking out the guardrails and water. Okay. Along with this, Brady, with the fact that they're time bound and like you can see that clear data. The goals are, it's very clear so that anybody can understand what we're trying to do. When you get down to the guardrails, that might be a little more confusing for Joe Schmo, who has not been in our meetings and doesn't understand. So I'm just, we can do whatever we will need to, but I just think that those are very clear at the top. Hard to argue with, hard to pull apart. They are what they are. That is data.
What I heard was, this is dumb. Why do y'all even bother doing that? That's what went through my head. Because I was the one that heard that. So I just felt like I got told that that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard of. But this builds accountability on the market. And we learned that the change doesn't happen until we are the change. And we're putting that out there. I don't know if it needs to be a hyperlink like they were talking about or whatever. I'm not trying to argue over, oh, it should be listed right there or not. That's not what I heard that's crap. And I don't believe that our work was that. So I want this to be where the public can see it, if they need to see it.
Yes, it does. So on our website right now, we currently actually have a page that has our goals. Mm-hmm. And so it is public facing on the website. And so it would be easy enough to keep it there and then reference policy to like, hey, it is firefighting policy. But I don't want to put something on the agenda if everybody, I mean, we don't obviously not vote tonight, but I believe what I heard is that we would feel more comfortable right now adopting the goals, but not the guardrails as a part of policy. And then continuing to learn and grow on these guardrails because they're not time bound and would feel less, I know pressure is the right word, but concerned because the goals have a 2030 timeline on them. And we also have to adopt them first and anyway. So there's less flexibility there with those, and we're less concerned about if we miss a target, like we know we have a 2030 timeline on these. But the guardrails, we'd rather not modify right now. That is what I know. That's what I'm saying. Okay. I think that helps. Any other thoughts, questions? Okay. Well, with that, we will continue the amazing work that we've been doing with 3D, which is our goal progress monitoring training. And I believe that we have people that are going to impersonate administrators tonight with non-CFP data. So, Tamara and Joey, let's get going.
What a great intro to what we're going to do tonight. Okay, it is a joy to be back in CFP. First of all, happy Board Appreciation Month to all of you who give so much of your time in service of improving student outcomes. And I will say on behalf of me and Joey, we have not only deeply enjoyed working with y'all, but the amount of work that you have put in, not only just the technical frameworks, but your examining your own leadership is truly commendable. So congratulations and celebrations and all that stuff. Also, congratulations on your nomination for District of the Year. Yes. I heard some bad news, which is that we had to wait till May to find out, and that's going to be a long wait, but it is so deserving, and congratulations to everyone in this room because y'all really, really deserve recognition, and that is such a high honor to be a finalist coming from a state with so many school districts and HEB being such an incredible organization. So, and lastly, I would say thank you so much for the recognition at the board meeting. It truly meant the world to us. I will say my favorite part of the whole meeting was when Trustee Shackman came down and told us that he saw us and panicked because he didn't bring his notes. And that's when Joey and I knew that we had done our job. I also understand you just got your doctorate, Trustee Shackman. Yeah, that's nice. Congratulations. All right, so many celebrations. Okay, so as always, we are going to start off with a little connection activity before we get into our impersonation role play here. So what I'm going to ask you to do, I'm going to split up the men because y'all always get to be with one another. Trustee Gilmore, will you scoot your chair over to President Hatfield there? And Trustee Shackman and Trustee Brady, Trustee Garza-Rojas, and Trustee Barnes. Y'all are going to be partners. I'm going to give you just 2 minutes and decide who's partner A. Raise your hand if you're partner A. All right, very good. Partner A is going to go first, and you're going to share with partner B what is something that you need to hear right now. And that could be, I just want to know that I'm supported. I want to know that my efforts are enough. I want to know that I can say no. Something that you really need to hear. And I want you to share that with your partner. And then partner B, I'm going to ask you to do the same thing. Okay? And I invite anybody who has a partner next to them to do the very same thing. So I'm going to set a timer for 2 minutes.
Chris, I need to know that you appreciate me and everything that I do.
Oh, wait, is he? So, partner A, as you are saying the thing you need to hear right now, partner B, you are going to write it down verbatim. Not an interpretation of what they said, but the exact thing they said they need to hear. When you switch, partner A, you become the listener and the writer.
That's why he's going to be the superintendent in the role play and I'm not. Partner A, you have 1 minute. Go ahead.
Really, for writing it down. I am. Like specific, very specific.
I'm me and my brother on the way out.
I know. I need to hear it.
Okay, partner B, it is your turn to share. All right, that is time. All right, no, don't leave your partner yet. I have a new instruction. Okay. So, if you do not have your partner's cell phone number, get your partner's cell phone number, assuming trustees you have that.
Sorry, my bad.
What I'm now going to ask you to do is set in the next week a calendar alarm on your phone, and I want you to text that to your partner exactly what they need to hear. Does that make sense? So random Tuesday, whatever, pick a day. Don't tell your partner.
Don't tell your partner when you're gonna
And
send it.
then I want you to text your partner within the next week exactly what they need to hear.
I think you got a raise.
Tonight, tomorrow morning, till.
Overtime is back. That's what I need.
Sure. You can text them, you can do a cute voice message, you know. Show up at their house, I don't know. Okay. All right, so we're gonna get started in just 1 second, but Trustee Jackman inspired us to make sure that there was no winter slide since we last left you. And so we must ask, why do school systems exist?
To improve student outcomes.
Anybody else have a different answer?
Trustee Barnes has it written down.
I know.
She takes really good notes.
All right, why do school systems exist? Trustee Barnes?
So many notes now. So many notes.
To improve student
And not
outcomes.
enough brain.
All right, and I already heard this from Trustee Gilmore, so you know. Student outcomes don't change until adult behaviors change. What adults are we talking about? Us. Hey. Okay. All right. So what we are going to do here tonight is we are going to run through a progress monitoring session. And because Dr. Reedy and the team worked so hard, y'all are getting the night off.
Oh,
And Joey, as a man of the theater, has been working all week to get into character as Superintendent Rodriguez.
Uh-oh.
So he will be delivering your board monitoring report, and then you will have the opportunity to ask him questions exactly like you would in a typical progress monitoring session. Obviously, this is the first time that y'all are doing this. It is not as easy as it sounds. So we are going to do the first scenario, and then we'll do a little debrief, and then we're going to do a second scenario. So the one thing I'm going to ask y'all to do is before you ask your question to Trustee Rodriguez, if you can state, I have a technical question, blah, I have a tactical question, or I have a strategic question. And if you're not sure, just, take your best guess. Questions for me on the instructions. Okay, Sue, you ready to go?
Yes, and as a quick reminder, this is not CFB data.
Yes.
I am not a trained superintendent. I have a superintendent certification. I am not interviewing for a job anywhere. And none of this is pertaining to CFB in any way. Cool?
Yes. This is invented, all of it. But Dr. E, you can still give him notes on his program.
that's exactly what I wanted to hear today.
Okay. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right, let's do it.
All right. Good evening, Board of Trustees, President Hatfield. It is good to be here tonight. We are going to be monitoring our Goal 2, which is our 8th grade STAR math meets level, increasing that from 39% in 2023 to 49% by June 2028. Today specifically, we're going to be monitoring our goal progress measure 2.1, which is the percentage of 7th grade students meeting grade level on math end of year, and that will increase from 45% in spring 2023 to 55% in spring 2027. As you can see here in our data, we are progressing. We have made some gains these past 3 years. Between 23 and 24, we saw a 2% increase, and then from 24 to 25 had a 1% increase. So even though we are 4 percentage points below our target for this year, We still obviously can see improvement there, and have a lot of reason to feel like some of our strategies are really working. We're going to dive into some of those here in a little bit. But the growth is positive, just not at the acceleration that we would like right now. But that is why we are at progressing, not off track. This is we're headed in the right direction. So some bright spots, as you know, me and the team, we went back there and looked at some of the things that were working really well, what some of the results that we were getting. And the students near grade level, so these are our students that were within the 10 percentage points of being grade level, they demonstrated the strongest growth, with proficiency increasing from 52% to 61% in just 2 years. And so once again, this is our students that are near grade level. Our emerging bilingual students really benefited from some of our visual models and language supports, specifically using consistent languages, language for our math concepts. We saw a 4 percentage point increase for our emerging bilingual students from last year to this year. And then our instructional routines, our classrooms are implementing, the ones who are implementing consistent problem solving routines and math discourse saw stronger overall growth. Now, for some of our areas for growth, our students who were 20 points below proficiency increased only 1 percentage point, which indicates that limited acceleration for students with the largest gaps. So even though our bright spots, we did see students near readiness really improve and accelerate, our students who are 20 points below did not have that same success. Our students with IEPs also only grew 1 percentage point and remain approximately 10 points below the subgroup target. So we do have a target for our students with IEPs, and they are 10 points below the target that we set for them. Conceptual math skills, across middle grades, fewer than 40% of students demonstrated mastery in proportional reasoning, highlighting these conceptual gaps. Proportional reasoning is one of the kind of necessary skills that you need in order to do math at the level in 7th grade and ultimately to do any algebraic reasoning as well. All right, so what did we do? Here are the strategies, the adult inputs that we've implemented from the prior monitoring period that have gotten us some results here. We prioritize coherence in middle school math instruction by clarifying essential grade level concepts and instructional expectations. This is where we started to implement consistent language for our students, and most math concepts are scaffolded, and so that is why it's so important for us to make sure that we have that vertical alignment there. We shifted coaching supports to emphasize student reasoning, the use of representations, and the analysis of mathematical misconceptions to try to address some of those gaps, see where students are really struggling and need some more support. We used interim assessment data to identify students near proficiency and adjusted small group instruction accordingly to target those students. And so these were some of the results that we had, the direct results from those strategies. Students who were close to grade level, once again, showed the most amount of growth. So that does work when we have targeted supports for those students, for students in general, and put them in small groups. They are making meaningful gains there. Our emerging bilinguals made steady progress, and we anticipate that to continue. Our students far below grade level and students with IEP experienced much lower growth. And then the gaps in proportional reasoning, once again, and that multiple step problem solving persisted across 7th grade. So what is our plan? And we do have some strategic adjustments because once again, we did see that some of these strategies are working, just not to the accelerated pace that we would like. And so we're going to make a few adjustments to try to get on track sooner rather than later. We're going to introduce differentiated acceleration models for students below grade level. So in the same way that we have our small group interventions for students who are near grade level, we're going to provide the coaching to teachers and in our PLCs focus on how to do the same exact thing, but for students way below targets, especially those that are only seeing that 1% growth, that student population. We're going to support our teachers in designing instruction. So we did just adopt high quality instructional materials last year, so that is one of the reasons why teachers are still kind of getting the hang of it. And that's what we need to support our teachers in. We have not done we're learning still. When you're implementing anything new, where those kind of bumps in the road are, and we're not ignoring them, we're addressing them and we're identifying them. And then we're going to strengthen our ongoing progress monitoring. Similar to this, how we're doing this right now, all of our campuses are doing the same thing with their data, and so just strengthening that process, ensuring that that's consistent from campus to campus, that they're having this exact same conversation about what students need to grow and what the plan is moving forward, at least a tri-weekly basis. So that is what we've done. That is what the results that we got, and then ultimately what our shift and strategic adjustments are going to be. And feel very confident about this plan for the next monitoring report in the next 4 months. President Hatfield, I'd like to turn it back to you and for any board discussion before approving the monitoring report.
All right, board members will remember one of our goals is to identify the type of question that we're asking of administration, technical, tactical, or strategic. So at this time, does anyone have any questions?
Trustee Rojas.
Mr. Gilmore raised his hand.
Trustee Gilmore.
I think it may be strategic, but I may be way out in the freaking weeds.
Go for it.
But you made mention that it's new material, and there's some learning on the teacher side of it. Have we looked at it? Is it that there's resistance from the teachers to teach the new material because they've always done it this way before, or is it truly just they're trying to grasp it themselves?
Trustee Gilman, that's a great question. We did roll out a survey and found out that only about 65% of our teachers actually felt like they were prepared to take on the new materials, and that is how we are decided to hone in on which campuses we need to provide more support to. Our teaching and learning department is doing an incredible job right now, identifying those schools, identifying those teachers, and being able to provide those supports. As to the reason why, the why they're not grasping it, that's really up to that teaching and learning department to find out. We will have those conversations in the back of the house and ensure that we get to that why, so that we can go ahead and address it and make sure that our teachers feel comfortable and confident to deliver that new material. I'd like to also confirm that the material in terms of the skills are not new. They're the same as they've been, right? They're still the same teaks. It's just that the curriculum itself is new. Yes, Trustee Brady.
Have you considered possibly looking back even at 6th grade and doing some progress monitoring during 6th grade so we can target those skills and hone in on those children earlier so that we can give them more instruction between 6th and 7th grade?
Can you just clarify what kind of question that was?
I'm hoping it's strategic.
Do you guys have like a cheat sheet?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
We're all asking strategic.
I was like going, what paper are you looking at?
Trustee Brady, to answer your question, absolutely. Part of this process is not just looking at 7th grade, but understanding where we've been with our 6th graders and 5th graders as well. Right, this is an 8th grade goal, and so we know that we have to look at our different cohorts of kids. Chief Harrington, can you go ahead and go back 1 slide, 2 slides, please? Yeah, this is our chief financial officer here. As you can see, these bars do not represent the same cohort of kids, right? These are different cohorts of students. So it is not like the same kids are in 23, 24, 25, and we're seeing growth that way. These are students that come from us from 6th grade from last year and are now in 7th grade this year, right? And so that is why it's such an important question you asked. That is exactly what our team is doing, is looking back to see where those gaps are, not only in 6th grade, but also even in 5th grade. Obviously, we have a 3rd grade goal, but we're doing the same thing, backtracking from there to kindergarten, 1st, and 2nd. Yes.
So that leads into a question that I had. Looking at this graph, you see that there's the 2% jump between 23 and 24, and then only 1% between 24 and 25. has your team been able to target kind of maybe what maybe didn't work for those students who were in seventh grade this year that maybe the previous class had?
It's a great
And I
question.
think that's a strategic question, I'm not sure.
Thank you for your strategic question. We did do some homework there, because it's necessary for us to understand truly where we've been, right, in order to even come up with those adjustments. So one of the things that we did notice was, because we primarily really focus as a strategy to focus on students who were near ready, that only gets us so far, right? And we realized that we cannot ignore at all the students who have IEPs, students who are 20 percentage points below. That makes up about 30% of the students that we currently have represented in this data. So that is why we know that's a big bucket, and we know that if we implement strategies and supports for those students, that it lifts the entire system up.
Thank you.
Of course.
Based on that question, that response, I think I'm asking a strategic question. These adjustments that you're planning to make, how might those show up in the budget?
That's good.
Yeah, that's an incredible question. So one of the things that we are doing, we're really doubling down, first of all, on the HQIM, right? So I know that is something that was a slight increase, but also we are getting this incentive as well from the state for the implementation of it. So it's kind of a both and. Also, TIA, right? So understanding that we are going to be, it's interesting because the budgeted resources are both going to be incentives from the state, right? The more TIA designated teachers we have, the more we draw down. At the same time, understanding that with maintenance and operations, there will be a clear return on investment analysis that we are conducting actually as we speak, to ensure that I don't have that for you right now in terms of like what exactly on the budget you can see. Right now, as it is, there's nothing. It's just going to be us like the staffing, right? Strategic staffing models. If there is an increase, that is something we will definitely place on that return on investment before we adopt the next budget. That's a great question.
Is there anything that you need to speed up the progress on this? Or do you have the tools that you need?
That is a great question. We do. We feel like we have the talent here. We have the focus here. From the board, what I would really need is we're going to make some shifts. There are going to be a few staffing choices that we've decided where we know there are certain campuses that need a little bit more support. And so we're going to have some more incentives for teachers who are proficient one or higher to go to campuses that need a little bit more support, so that we can lift up once again that entire system. And we should see some more accelerated growth when we start to put our most equipped teachers and our most proficient teachers at the campuses in front of kids who need the most. So I'm going to need some help from the trustees, not only if I do need an increase in the budget for that line item, but then also the messaging to community members, parents, because the realities are that that means that sometimes like a teacher may not be on that campus anymore, and it'd be nice to not only for me to be able to explain it that way, but for also our trustees to explain why we made that decision.
Really following on the two questions that we have led through this, and I think there's a practical question, but how do we anticipate adjusting professional development, targeting specifically at these goal improvements for people in various cohorts?
That's a great question. So, as we're adopting the new curriculum, a lot of the curriculum is actually customizable so that it is following students as they are going through the year and highlighting for them and for their teachers where those gaps are, where those skill gaps are need to be addressed. So now it's about spending our PLCs and equipping our administration at the campus level to help our teachers and support our teachers during those PLCs to reinforce some of those practices, right, to ensure that they're having really important and critical discussions around which skills specifically need to be addressed, not only that, but 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, we found out actually that they were not in PLCs. It was rare that they would be able to plan together. It was rare that they were all speaking the same language. And in math, where everything is scaffolded, right? You definitely need to be able to have that consistent language to build on top of one another. 1 year of loss in math can break down the entire thing for a student, the entire learning. And math is exclusively that way. So yeah, that's why it's so important for us to look at the gaps and then be able to support our teachers in identifying those. Like I said, in a weekly, bi-weekly, tri-weekly, however much time they can get with their colleagues, their 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. Yeah.
Which strategy is most effective with our
Yeah, I think our most effective strategy was the consistent level of rigor from the high quality instructional materials. Before we adopted them, and even when I got into the classroom teaching, when I was a teacher 30 years ago, many moons ago, it was just up to, I was a first year, second year, third year teacher, having to make all my lessons, right, and try to be as effective as I can with the experience that I had. And now with these materials, there's a certain level of rigor that comes with that in preparation. And we did see that consistent level of rigor is where we really saw some of the major gains. At least we have attributed that as the reason why. Especially with our emergent bilingual students, saw the biggest benefit there because not only is the rigor increased, but all the language is the same. And so when you're using that same language from 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th grade, our emergent bilingual students were able to internalize those concepts quicker at an accelerated pace, but then also, once again, like that helped our students with IEPs, and that definitely helped the rest of our students as well grasp those concepts. The ones that did not work, once again, is in going around different campuses, our teaching and learning department found that there were some inconsistencies with the implementation of the materials. And teachers not feeling adequately supported in delivering those materials to their students. So once again, definitely saw some really big highlights, which is why we know this stuff is working. Remember, we're not off track. We are progressing. We're seeing growth every year. Right now, it's just about tweaking, honing in, and making some shifts there, so that we can make sure that we see the accelerated growth that we need to make in the next year.
Okay, so I think we are moving in the right direction. We're making some progress update. We're looking forward to the next one. And it sounds like from how the board can help, that there could be some strategic staffing coming eventually. But sounds like you guys have a good one.
I didn't do anything, I just finished somebody.
And see. Good job, guys.
We were strategic about it.
All right, so let's do a quick debrief before we move on to the next one. So the first question for y'all is, what did you notice? Hesitation from us, okay?
I noticed that the confidence that administration had and the evidence of the work that was, like, the amount of work that goes into reaching a goal, but being able to see it and hear it.
And how did anybody else have that experience?
Well, I felt like AKA Super Joey. Super Joey was sounded very confident that he was able to explain well what they are doing in order to answer our questions. So I thought, again, the confidence was very clear that you all are doing the work. We do see that. So it's nice to be able to hear and answer these questions in detail. So,
but I think also that even if his questions have been, I don't know really clearly, I'll have to get back to you. That's okay too. Like, that's okay. We don't expect to have all the answers. And so, I mean, but I do feel like, weren't dealing, I felt like I was trying to think beyond just that, how did you do it, what did you do, like, and having researched through that and trying to think about bigger picture, like, how is this helping, how are we moving forward, how can we support, versus what did you do, but more, how are we,
How do we get there, where are we going, and what do we need to do? Because it's very goal driven.
Do y'all feel like you know how you got here after this? Yeah.
How they got here?
There's no that. It's we.
Oh, you mean this?
Yeah. Like after hearing that, it's fine if the answer is no. But like after that explanation of these 3 slides, do you have a grasp of why this looks the way it looks?
Yes.
Do you feel confident that your superintendent has an understanding of how you got there and what needs to be adjusted?
Yes.
Okay.
I think this process helped us to come up with a more effective way to deal with our meeting. We get great reports from our staff, but this allows us to go to the next step, if you will, to find ways that we truly can engage with the superintendent and with Dr. E to help make their work even more effective.
I feel like it also equips us in the community. If somebody says like, what's going on in CFB, or what are you guys working towards? Like, I'm able to say, we're working on student achievement, and if somebody has a follow-up question, I'm not obviously going to go into all these details, but I have words I can say now because of the depth of information that we've been provided. Like, why did you let that teacher die?
And I'll lift up real quick, Trustee Barnes, I really appreciate that you said it's okay to not have the information, right? And that is going to happen from time to time. And the reason that he had all the information is because you were asking high level questions that would have occurred during an analysis and not like stuff that is so granular that your superintendent or your whoever's presenting, that they're like, well, that's probably a level a couple below me in terms of like where I'm operating. So I appreciate that, and that's also, I think, credit to the questions you have.
So I think this is interesting because I think if we get into a process where here's what we're presenting to the board, then our leadership team can also break it down. I think it's a positive way to deliver, even though we didn't meet our goal. And I think that that's what we need to do for our teachers and our administrators is that here's where we are and why we're there. I think this right here is key for us all because here's what we've been doing. We've had instructional rounds and meetings and we've analyzed data. I mean, for our lens, I think we can take this model and break it down as to what we're doing in our areas so that when we get to this point, we're all talking the same language. And I think it's not an attack. I sometimes feel, of course not in this district, but in other districts, when you watch board meetings and people are like, well, we got to get there. And you don't realize what you're saying. But now we're really targeting our questions to, okay, if somebody asked the finance question. Was it you, Marjorie, or Trustee Hatfield? I really like how you call that, Trustee Hatfield. I think it's targeting specifics, whether it's strategic, technical, or tactical. I think it's not just tell us, right? And I think if we do that in our meetings as well, we're not just putting out stuff going, well, we're there to support you. We're really making everybody have a vote.
It's kind of like when you mentioned that this week, blows and grows.
Yeah.
It's kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
That high level blows and grows.
Yeah. And I love that you said that because the goal, and I know y'all have brought this up many times, and I love that you're always thinking about the community, is 2 things. Number one, this should tell a story of what happened, right? Like, there were gaps. We found the gaps, and they're like, we know like where they are and why that is so significant, especially as related to math. And therefore, we implemented high quality instructional materials, which is going to standardize like the rigor, but also help us align our PD and support to getting our teachers there, right? And that should be a story. Like, I am not an educator, I'm just a mere mortal. And I watch plenty of monitoring sessions, and I honestly don't. I don't understand this, right? And so if I'm feeling that way, I know that trustees who are not educational experts are feeling that way, and I know anybody watching at home is feeling that way, right? And that makes it like that. That's the first thing I want to do is disengage.
Well, and I think that as our team, we think we need to provide more slides to provide more clarity. That and the slides go on forever, and the presentations go on forever. But really, I think we all need to stay to the concept where what is the story telling us, and going back to what we said were going to be our goals. So my other question under I noticed, so Superintendent Joey is doing the presentation, so and you have interpretation. So what does that look like when this is given? Is the superintendent doing all of these, or is that something we decide on our goals, like on the presentations?
The best practice is to have the superintendent introduce this slide and give a broad overview, like demonstrating your understanding. And that could be like a summary. You don't have to go line by line.
Well, I mean, Chris and I started that. I mean, I always introduce the item, kind of tell a little brief synopsis of it, and then it would go to, Chris Julian, he gives a shout out to the campus that you'll follow this, like we follow this format, right?
Mm-hmm. And I guess that's kind of what the kernel, if we were to ask you about the budget,
then so if it's a finance question, and let's say Chris is up here presenting something on school improvement, and you ask the question, well, what more money do we need to support? He's not going to sit there and say, well, we need this software and this and this. We would love to have all that, Chris, but if it's a question that maybe Chris can't answer, that's why they're here too, because I want us all to be on the same page that, we're all of our time is limited and we're running and going. So
from my perspective, you're the educational expert and your team. Mm-hmm. We're not. So but you introduce it, and then you feel like somebody else is best to present the rest of it.
But then let's say you ask a question, it's not a problem if the CFO buzzes in. Okay.
Of course. Whatever you need. I think whatever you want. And it was funny because Joey brought this up to me today. Is like, these are conversations y'all are already having, right? This isn't like, oh, and look at this. Like, this is your everyday. You're just synthesizing this into the actual strategic story of, what happened and what did we learn and what are we going to do? And so it is that process that makes this so powerful. I mean, we've literally spent hours where I was just drilling him with every single question I thought that you guys might ask today. Like, we did hours and hours and hours.
Brought in people from our team who are educational experts. You're just like, man, he knows a lot about, math. I don't. It's just because we spent hours talking about it.
Would you like a brownie, Joey? I mean, come on, it's hard. And that's why we have our team and we delegate, but we still know what's happening. I think that that's so important. But I'm very process oriented, and I don't want to get the system wrong, because I think this is a great system.
I think that I can understand and appreciate that. I think the most important part is the outcome. And the outcome is to have a strategy conversation with the experts of CFB between the board, so y'all have a good understanding. And anybody listening is like, they know what happened, whether, great, progressing, or needs some help. And then we know what we're going to do better or differently as a result. And I think one of the beautifully right is like, that should, implementing high quality instructional materials is challenging. It's a massive systemic change, and you put one thing into place and it moves all this other stuff. And so to have your board along, and I love that y'all ask, like, What is the financial impact? What is the staffing impact? What might that be in the future? Like, that is important to understand. Like, I pulled this lever, so what does that do to everything else? And also, it's not all going to work yesterday. And so to be able to say, like, we are seeing some progress, but since this is a massive systemic change, like, we can anticipate steady growth, but it's still going to take some time. And like that, I hope, is very reassuring, right, to y'all as performance managers to know, okay, now I know what I'm looking for and I know why. It's not, I mean, we all want everything to go faster, but that's not how large systems work, especially when you're, doing implementing.
Yeah, and I think that going back to, not just bright spots, but this, I can tell you, Kim Holcomb, she'll call me in the middle of the day and tell me exactly.
I thought you were going to say the middle of the night.
No, those are called emails. But we do talk about it, and it's a concern. But then it's, what do we provide? Because as you're training new administrators and a lot of our team is new. We do, because when I look at this, I see the word students in just about everything, and that's our main focus. I mean, it's students this and students this, and I don't think there's a conversation that any of the people in the audience don't have about our students. And the question of which staff have been trained to which staff needs more support. I think that's another layer of, and that's why I want them here, just so that they understand and can hear the board. Because I think it will streamline. This is our focus, and it's not just storytelling of different things we decide to put on the agenda.
Well, I would think going through all this, that as a presenter, it would make it easier to present, knowing that the board's all on the same page. And they're going to come to us with strategic questions. They're not coming with gotcha questions during the board meeting. Because the way we have the system set up, we have a call with you before the meeting. We can ask those technical and tactical questions. Then that gives them time to weave that into their presentation. So then we're all just about strategic evidence.
And just want to remind everyone too that that is great, and those questions are not bad. They oftentimes add context, right? So I asked a ton of them, and today when we were practicing, in terms of prioritize coherence. Like, what were we doing before? Or what is coherence? Like, I don't know. I do know what that is now. I've not because right? So asking those types of questions are foundational to being able to ask that next level question. So I love that you're thinking about efficiency and helping your team prepare. And also I don't want y'all to be really scared from those questions. There's a lot of times we absolutely cannot build context without them. All right, you ready for another round? Okay. Another round.
All right, everybody, crack your knuckles. Here's your last round.
Are y'all switching?
No.
You're the superintendent the entire night?
I'm superintendent the entire night.
What am I doing?
Channeling my inner knowledge. You are now our chief operations. Yeah. Chief operations officer. CEO.
I think Paul's the deputy. He's sitting over there. Come on.
All right, here we go.
I cannot wait to see how you're going to fix this.
Yeah. Good evening, Board of Trustees, President Hatfield. It is great to be here tonight. We are going to be monitoring our goal 3, which is the percentage of graduates meeting CCMR standards based on accountability. Will increase from 56% in 2023 to 70% in June 2028. Our goal progress measure that we are monitoring today specifically is around the CCMR indicator TSI readiness by assessment. This is not college prep, so this is only by assessment in math and ELAR. Remember, it doesn't necessarily count if you do one or the other, it's got to be both. Especially according to this goal progress measure. So we want that to increase from 38% in spring of 2023 to 50% by spring 2027. As you can see, we are off track. TSI readiness among 11th grade students increased slightly, as you can see, between 23 and 24, but then we took a 2% dip, which brings us right back to baseline in 2023. So as a result, the district is currently 7 points below the annual GPM target and below the trajectory needed to reach that 50% readiness by spring 2027. So this indicates that we the need for some focused adjustments. Some bright spots for us are our near ready students were targeted and they received some supports that got them where they needed to be a lot faster. They were ready at a better and faster rate, increasing from 41% to 52%. ELAR readiness is improving. That is very, very stable. It is more stable than math. And that is helping prevent larger declines overall. Our participation in readiness supports, students who consistently participated in supplemental TSI aligned supports were more likely to maintain or improve readiness. So that is something that we did see that was working and something that we are really hoping to be able to do better, do more of, and scale out more throughout the district. Our areas for growth, it's math. Math readiness declined, and that is what is dragging that number further and further down. And it's a good thing that we spotted this now, so that we can take care of this. Students not in advanced courses, we did notice that those students who are not in advanced math pathways and not in advanced courses in high school are seeing the largest declines in readiness, and contributing to that overall drop. And then our students with IEPs, TSI readiness for students with IEPs remain low and showed little year-over-year improvement. I believe it was a little less than 1% improvement. So here's what we did from our prior monitoring period. We expanded access to TSI aligned coursework and readiness supports in high school. We did expand it, not across at the scale that we would like to see. We went a little slow with it, but that is something that we did, the change that we made. We identified near-ready students using PSAT and interim data to prioritize the preparation, and then we embedded TSI-related skills into the existing instructional time. And that was only in the 10th grade and 11th grade when we did that. So what happened is, the gains among near-ready students were just not large enough. That is where we saw the most growth, but it couldn't offset the stagnation and declines for our other student groups. Our math readiness declined in 2025, contributing to that overall drop. It is math. Once again, it is math. ELAR is doing very, very well. Students outside advanced coursework and students with IEPs showed limited progress, widening those readiness gaps. So now we know to focus on that subgroup population because they are also below their own targets. I also wanted to clarify that our students with IEPs are getting accountability for completing their IEP plans. So that is something that we are getting accountability points for, but they are not meeting TSI requirements. So those two things are very different. I just wanted to, because I know we talked about IEPs and accountability recently. Overall readiness returned to baseline levels. We're right back where we started. We're not lower, which is good, but we are back where we started, so indicating a shift. So here are the shifts that we need to make. We're shifting TSI readiness efforts earlier in high school to address the foundational gaps before 11th grade. So we are going to take the identification process back to 8th grade. We're actually going to have students take TSI between 8th grade and 9th grade here to identify that earlier. We get more students, 30% of them met before their freshman year. We now have 70% of students that we can go and focus on. Do the same thing on a yearly basis until it's about 10, 15, 20% of students that are in the 11th grade that we need to provide some more targeted supports for. We're going to prioritize math readiness. Once again, ELAR readiness is doing well. I'm not saying we're going to ignore it because the goal is to maintain and continue to grow our ELAR TSI. And right now, the supports and the interventions are working in ELAR. That is why we are prioritizing math. I just want to make that clear. We're not forgetting about ELAR. It's just the strategies are working for ELAR. So we need to make a shift there with math readiness. We're expanding differentiated readiness strategies for students not enrolled in advanced coursework. Once again, we identified that students who are not in advanced coursework are seeing the least amount of progress. And so identifying those differentiated readiness strategies for them, knowing that that makes up about 55% of our students taking TSI 11th grade, it seems to be a really big bucket of students for us to be able to target. We're going to strengthen our progress monitoring. So once again, as I noted earlier, we want to make sure that as we're looking at the data mid-year, that we're able to make some really strong adjustments for our students in targeting those math skills where we know that there are gaps, especially if we're looking back from 8th grade, and if they're taking the TSI between 8th and 9th, that we're able to spot exactly where those gaps are in those skills. And once again, reinforcing that type of identification process and strategy, decision making in our PLCs, having our coaches reinforce those same exact practices in the classroom. So that is our report. Once again, we're off track. It is not where we want to be. However, we feel really confident. We've done an analysis in the back of the house. Our team is motivated. And none of us like this. But we are motivated to make this better. We have a clear path forward, and we are making shifts to ensure that this data does not look like this when we monitor again in the next monitoring period. So, Trustee Hatfield, if you would just take the floor now, and I'm open to any questions you guys may have.
Well, thank you very much, and I appreciate the recognition that we're on track, but it's very great that you're able to provide strategic plan for us so that we can see that way forward. With that,
I do. I think it's a fantastic idea to get TSI to students identify them earlier. Is there a correlation between these kids that are not passing TSI to kids that in earlier years were not passing EOC, not passing STAR earlier, not making progress on that? But we have identified this group of kids much earlier and started targeting them.
Yeah, that's a great question. We can go back as early as 3rd grade when they first take a STAR exam and see a correlation clearly between students who are met in 11th grade TSI math and the ones who met in 3rd grade. And it's only about a 5% actually difference between those grade levels in those assessments.
What staff's been trained to those assessments?
The TSI.
Readiness.
The TSI assessment, which, one more time, repeat the question?
What staff's been trained
to deliver the
TSI?
It's it varies campus to campus, but it is mostly either an administrator, an AP, and or a coach.
How about a technical question? If you go back to the slide, the bright spots on the near ready students and the participation in readiness supports. Is readiness defined as reading and math in those? Because it doesn't specify the
Specifically in which one, sorry?
in the first one and the third one on bright spots.
Okay, so for the near ready, is that what you're saying? That is for both ELAR and math. Okay. That is correct. And then also for the third bright spot as well. That is for both of the subjects.
Okay.
So prioritize math readiness. We're talking about it. So we're going to take it. Are we gonna? Is that going back with those that have underperformed and they don't have to do that?
Yeah.
Are we going to figure out where they need to go back to? What's that process look like?
That's great. Are you referring to, just to get some clarity, the students in 11th grade that we're reviewing data for? What happens to them next year?
Yeah.
The idea is that by 12th grade, right, we do have some intervention supports there for our students that make sure that we can get as close as possible to getting our students met in TSI an assessment, and if not, understanding that we do have the option, at least for ELAR, for our college prep. And for math, going back to our college prep strategy, we're going to have them start taking it in 8th grade instead. And this is not test prep, it is embedded almost like a curriculum. It should be embedded within the curriculum of 8th grade. That goes all the way up until senior year. And so the goal is that they do this prep, and so by the time they're in 8th grade, the end of 8th grade, they will take the TSI. It does not change for our 12th graders. Once we start to use the same prep for them, they're going to get into 12th grade. They have a little bit less time, obviously, but the goal is for them to retake TSI again to see where they're at then. What we don't want to happen is have our students go into college taking remedial courses. And so, yeah, that's what we're trying to avoid. Just a reminder, this is not accountability. We're doing very well in accountability. It is just this specific requirement that we are on. Yes.
As far as our students with IEPs, and I've noticed that on both schools now, they are making very good progress on both schools. Have we done a curriculum review of our students with our IEPs and or done training with our teachers to make sure they're fulfilling their curriculum with
Yeah, we have, and that's a great question. Some of the things that we saw and saw reported, our teaching learning department, like I said, has been doing an insane job gathering this data, is that teachers are still not only getting used to the new curriculum, but also how to deliver it and differentiate it to our different student groups. And so with student IEPs, they tend to need some more supports. Not only that, but in delivering them, you need a little bit more support for the teachers to deliver that, right? Because it is, you need to make those accommodations, you need to make modifications, and teaching practices need to be ramped up. You need to also, what we need to do as an administration is, and our principals, is support our teachers in how to gain the capacity during their lessons and get them the skill set, the practices to take our students with IEPs and put them in small groups during every lesson. Because right now, at the moment, teachers are reporting that they are feeling like they've got a lot of things to do, a lot of priorities competing, and that they're not able to actually have a structured lesson where they can take some time away, 15, 20 minutes, to address these gaps with their students with IEPs. And that is something we're addressing in our PLC.
If that's something the board can help support you with, we are willing to do that, I'm sure. Consider that, to provide those supports so that we can strengthen our capabilities.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that, Trustee Brady. Any other questions from the board?
I have one more question. You talked about how it's really the math side that's creating the off track. Mm-hmm. So of the budgeted strategies, what accounts for the ER growth?
It's a great question. For the ELR growth, we actually did have a line item that you all approved. Thank you, Board of Trustees, for approving this last year for some higher impact tutoring that increased in about $500,000 increase in the budget. As you guys know, 80% of our budget is personnel, and so being able to approve that, knowing that we had to actually take away from some other under-enrolled programs to find that money was a big deal. I know a lot of parents reached out to y'all and you know, weren't too happy about the wood shop at their school being taken away, but understanding these are our goals and this is where we want to go. That this is exactly what we want, and it worked for ELAR. It really worked, and so we get to at least say we saw a 10 percentage point increase in just ELAR alone from that high impact tutoring for reading, because we do have a literacy crisis, not only in Texas but in this country. And so understanding that, knowing that that is a strategy that did work for us. So thank you for that question. Yes, and I hope we get to approve that again next year when we increase it slightly, so because we know it's working.
At what point do we see the correlation between TSI rate and the SAT and other interim data? In other words, we're saying we want to stress here. Is it actually going to make a difference over here?
It's a great question, Trustee Shackman. One thing that we have noticed is PSAT and interim data. What we've done with our local data, right, because we do have local assessments that we give, is we try to align it as close as possible to the ACT, SAT happens to be just a little bit higher rigor than TSI, and TSI is already pretty high, right? And so we know that if we align it to the highest assessment, that we at least we're shooting for the moon, hoping they land somewhere in the stars. I think that's the phrase. And so, to answer your question, we've done an analysis at our own district level assessment to ensure that there's alignment there, so that we know that if we see the interim data and the PSAT, and we're not completely shocked at the end of the year when we see TS9 go, wait a minute, we projected to be at 60% and we're at 50, right? That is something we're not seeing, and at least the data, the trends, are not telling us that. So, thank you for that question.
All right, any other questions?
Wow, Joey.
Sorry to whoever knows this stuff.
Yeah,
Actually, I was thinking about how I can hire you, so.
No, I'm waiting for somebody back there to be like, this guy has no idea what he's talking about.
You just start talking faster when you're not sure.
Yes, I learned from the
You did a great job.
Remember, this is fictitious data, so.
Yeah, this is all fictional. All the practices are fictional. Like, I don't know if half of this stuff is possible. Like, okay, I talk to people who do know stuff. We are like 80.
Chris was
You
going.
guys have a pretty straight face though, because I was looking at him a lot.
I think Chad was ready to jump up. I watched him. I mean, I was waiting.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Thank you. It took a lot of preparation.
All right, I know everybody's ready to go home, so we'll make this quick, but just some real quick, between the two monitoring sessions, what do you feel like went well?
Not enough practice. Yeah, practice. Yeah, that's helpful. I mean, they can have practice. And you said, put to them, and really, really good, and they're great questions about the success here, okay,
I thought that, like, having looked at it ahead of time made it easier for me to actually listen to what you were saying, because there were a few notes that I had made that you actually, like, you said it in your verbal presentation of it, so I was able to understand more, having pre-read it, so that I could actually focus on the presentation versus focusing on trying to read and process.
and write down the real things.
Anything else that you feel like went well?
I will say that, I think it's very transparent. And even though when the first slide you see says off track, I think there's an explanation for it, but I also think it's like we have a plan, because I think a lot of things go off track sometimes, but we come back and we get there, but we're reporting progress, and the progress wasn't there, but that doesn't mean we won't get there. And I think Trustee Brady, your first question was so positive. Like, it was like, so, you were asking questions, but it wasn't like, well, what happened? And so I felt like, because we have an explanation when we do all these things and when we're progress monitoring, and maybe they don't work out at that designated board meeting, but I think the way Joey explained, Superintendent Joey, explained and really clarified, and I think that's sometimes what we miss in meetings, is that we put charts up and then you don't know, is this a good thing or a bad thing? But I think having that, we're on track, but we're off track, but we weren't off, but we have to sometimes be on track to get our plan back together. And I don't think it was a negative. I think it's just reporting and saying, we got this as a team. And I never felt, there was an emotion. That's right. That's exactly what I was looking for. So I think that's a good process and a good systematic way.
Yeah, you're creating the conditions for continuous improvement, because I know that if I start this off by, what did you guys do back there? That is not creating the conditions for transparency or continuous improvement, safety, trust, all the things that you need to do to have difficult conversations. So I love that you brought that up. Great. Okay, where are some areas for growth?
I don't think you have to know all the answers every time. Like, I guess my question would be, if we are or aren't providing the questions in advance, making sure that administration doesn't feel like our questions, like we're just seeking to understand, and gain clarity from our vantage point. It's not a, we're the expert in this, so we have this question because we know the answer. Because we, like, I'm in education, I know Kim's in education, and like, I'm not in anything. So I think it's just like making sure that we all recognize that we're on a team together and we're just seeking to understand.
What felt comfortable or easier during this time? Looking at the data and asking questions.
I mean, the first time was a little bit harder than the second time.
Why is that?
Because I felt like everyone was doing it. It felt like that. I may not have done the right thing, but it felt like that.
I felt very confident that Superintendent Joey was going to give me the answer that I was looking for, because he understood what we were asking. It was a little interesting, but who knew whether we even understood my language?
I speak English, yeah.
Well, it wasn't emotional.
And I will say it's and this experience is interesting because you did not, you all pretty much, I'm pretty sure you wrote this down, you have the exact percentage here, but had pretty much all strategic questions. And even the ones that were not, felt like something that I could have prepared and talked about at some point with Tam or with my team, either today or yesterday. She is my team. And so because of that, like, it didn't feel like a lot of gotchas. I also have the advantage of being able to make stuff up if I want to, because, you know, none of it is real. So yeah, as you're asking them, but I did want to, like, say, like, not a single time did y'all ask something where I had to say, I can either say I'll get back to you, but I didn't have to say, like, you know what, I might need to get a campus principal to answer that. Does that make sense? Like, all the questions you asked were really appropriate, high level. That's one of the kind of my own internal rule is, like, if a trustee asks a question and only a campus level person or anyone beneath the cabinet level can answer that, then it is probably not a board appropriate question. And you guys all did a really good job at not asking those.
That's a good rule.
Yeah, that really
It's a good way to look at it. Yeah.
I liked how it kind of felt like right up front, you know, we're on track. You know, it kind of gave all the information really just at the beginning. We all know there's no elephant in the room. There's no, like, we're all aware, but that's because, and we're all working towards the goal. And so I liked that. I thought that made everything feel a little more
I would
comfortable.
totally agree with that, because I could feel my emotion at the beginning, like, oh, we're on track on this one too, and it's like, okay, by the time you were done giving your speech, I'm like, okay, now let's ask you the question. It was like, I wasn't waiting for the ball to drop. Like, okay, what's next slide gonna say? What's next slide gonna say? And it's that. It's like,
ripped off the Band-Aid.
yeah, here we are.
But like the repeated format helped because
Yeah,
like
sure.
I knew what to expect. Yeah.
Thank you.
One more question. Trying to skip. I know. What felt uncomfortable and or challenging in this?
Well, like Kim said, I was like, because it's a red,
Yeah.
that's a little uncomfortable.
Yep.
But I think really it's just sitting in your feeling right then and there that we're about to process some data. So let's go.
From a challenging standpoint, it's hard to juggle, trying to figure out what kind of question you want to ask and how it's appropriate. As we get more comfortable in the process, it will become a little easier, I think, because it's unnerving going, am I doing this right?
Any other?
I think if I hadn't have had the rules, it might have felt even more uncomfortable. So like, I like the idea of having a cheat sheet to like reference because it
I need this
also,
on the dais.
yeah, I need this on the dais, like a thing on the dais, like our little placements, because it made it so that I also, if I was thinking a question, I looked down and I was like, not appropriate. So like I had a reference point to tell myself, wait, you're thinking like education cats, not coordinator cats, shut it down. So this was a good reference. Like I think if I hadn't had this, it would be
Yeah, I liked, because I heard y'all reference questions from this, which is great, because those questions are transferable to whatever you're looking at, right? And so I think that's, I mean, again, this sounds so easy, like, oh, just ask a bunch of questions, right? Easier said than done. This is a muscle, because the other thing that we're doing is building understanding. And so I want to, first of all, commend y'all, because you are, what I'm hearing from the board is that you're being incredibly mindful of your experts' time, which is really important, because when they are not preparing reams of paper for people, they are doing high leverage activities to move outcomes for our kids, right? So that is always a consideration of like, what is this question incentivizing my administration to do? And would I rather them track that down what color the pencils are, or would I rather them be doing something for our kids, right? So I can see, and not just tonight, I think that's been a repeated theme. I do want to encourage y'all to like to push yourselves also to get comfortable with understanding the story of what happened, because I asked him so many questions today, but it really was, even like, is there a correlation? You showed me math data that was not incredibly positive, right? At the beginning of this, I just said something, I don't remember. But like that we are working on, and now I'm seeing a similar trend with TSI. So we are seeing this as a system-wide like area of focus, and so we can talk about that too. So just whatever you need, right, without getting like in the weeds, but to make sense for yourselves of understanding why that thing is happening. It's going to help you understand like then why these strategies and what you're expecting in terms of when we're going to start seeing results. It's also going to build your understanding for the next time, and also all of this stuff is interconnected. And so just give yourself some room to be respectful of their time, and also like the question that you're just like, I'm not sure what the coherence is going.
I appreciate you saying that, because this week there was a lot of instructional walks, and as we saw great things flow, we also started connecting pieces of things that probably needed to be pieced together, just exactly what was like this report. And I think that gives us more to share with you all at a higher level, because if we had to say something was off track, I guarantee you we could tell you why, because we do elementary, middle, and high school, and you start seeing the patterns and the trends, but it takes time for us all to get back in a room and go, we probably need to look at system-wide, and that's what came out for me during the walks we did this week.
Yeah, and I think earlier too, you kind of slipped this in, but it was like we surveyed our teachers about like the quality of professional development or how they're feeling and X, Y, and Z, right? Like y'all did such a phenomenal job with your guardrails. So like that's gonna start coming in too. You mentioned TIA, right? Like you will start to hear some of the things that you put in place. Like Dr. E did her analysis of student experience and saw that middle school is the lowest. We know student experience is like fundamental to higher levels of learning, and so you're going to start to see the interaction too, not only between like your goals and the great infrastructure and systems that are being put in place and how that fits all the goals, but also how the guardrails that you put in place are complementing goals. So
it's very systematic.
Yeah. All right. Anything else?
Okay, well, great job.
Thank you.
Thank you guys. Our next one, we're going to do a live CFP version. So I think it's just good to say while y'all are all here, we hope that you also see from us that we're learning and growing, and we're seeking to understand and making work that you guys do, because we know the great things are happening for kids. So don't be afraid of us. We're also human, and we want to support the growth and continue our trajectory. And with that, the time is 8:00.